All right, this is page 4 for day 8 guided practice, standard A.7. There are only 3 questions here, but this is going to take some time because of the type of questions that they are. So let's go ahead and get started. Number 11. Click on a box to choose each statement you want to select. You must select all correct statements. Okay, again, sound like a broken record, but when it says you must select all correct statements, there could be more than one answer. All right. The graph shows the relationship between the distance traveled and the amount of gasoline in a tank of a car during a trip. So we need to look at the graph. The important things here, we're talking about the amount of gas in the tank. The x is equal to the distance in miles. The y is equal to the amount of gas in gallons. If we notice our key points here, we have a key point here. Our y-intercept is 15. And a key point here, our x-intercept is 300. Okay, we need to select all true statements. So again, there could be more than one answer. You need to check all of them. But we have 5 statements here. You need to read them carefully and then select all of the statements that are true. Okay, I'm going to let you pause the video and then try that with your group. Select all these statements that are true given the information we have from this graph. Okay, number 12. Type your answer into the box. A function is represented by the verbal sentence below. Okay, so there should be a box here. I'm going to put a box. And we need to type in the answer to the question. F of x is, so I'm going to start with f of x. F of x. And it says is, remember is equals 2 less than, remember less than is a minus, and it means switch. Okay, so I'm going to switch the 2. I'm going to switch the product of 4 and x. So 2 is going to go on this side, and the product of 4 and x, 4x, is going to go on this side. Okay, so we have f of x equals 4x minus 2. And we got that from taking these words and writing it as this function. Okay, now that was only part of the question. That's the first part. We have 2 parts. The second part says, using this function, what is the value of f of 3? Okay, so think, if I were to plug a 3 in here, would I be plugging the 3 in for the y value or the x value? So if you look, this is f of x. So when I plug in a 3, I'm plugging in a 3 for the x value. So I'm going to take 4x minus 2 and plug in the 3. 4 parentheses 3 minus 2. Okay. Easy thing would be to plug it into Desmos because then I know that I won't make a mistake. 4 parentheses 3 minus 2. And the value, when I plug in 3, is equal to 10. Okay, so number 12 there was a little bit tricky because there are 2 steps. First step here in blue was to actually write the function, given the words. Second step here in green was to plug in the 3 and then see what the value was when we plugged in 3. Okay, so make sure you read this question carefully. DESIMAL is going to have a lot of questions like this because it requires you to know 2 different concepts instead of just one. Okay, so make sure if you see a question like this, you do know what to do. You just got to go slow, read carefully, and take your time. Okay, and then the last one here. This last one, if you're one of these people that do not listen to the videos, you just watch and write stuff down, this is not the problem you want to do that on. Okay, you need to listen to what we're doing and you need to see what we're doing because we have not spent much time on this in class. And this is very important for you to understand. It should be an easy question that you get right, but it's going to take some steps in Desmos. Okay, so number 13 here. Which function represents the data in the table? You notice all of these are x squareds. They're quadratics. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use Desmos to find a quadratic regression model. Quadratic regression. Okay, it's also called curve of best fit. Curve of best fit. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. It's called a quadratic regression or curve of best fit. Okay, so here's how we do it. First thing we need is we need to type in this table. Okay, so if you remember how to type in a table, you need to hit the plus, table. Okay, and we're going to type in exactly what we see. We have -6, -5, -4, -3, -2. For our y values, we have 8, 3, 0, -1, and 0. Okay, if you see the points, it looks kind of like a curve. We have some of the points of a quadratic function. Okay, there's the table. The next thing we need to do is we need to type in the quadratic regression equation. Okay, so we're going to type in the, oh, I can write on this now, interesting. Okay, so we're going to type in the quadratic regression equation. Okay, and this is where it is tricky because we need to remember how to do this. It will not be on your formula sheet, okay, but it will give you the answer if you remember how to do it. Okay, so here's what you need to type in. We need to type in, and you can write this down on a piece of paper somewhere. It's very important. It is in your notes. We talked about it, I think, day 1 or 2. So for the quadratic equation, remember a general quadratic equation is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Remember, that is a quadratic function in standard form. So here's what we need to type in to get our curve of best fit. We need to type y1, then we need to type the squiggle, I think it's called a tilde. Then we need a x1 squared plus b times x1 plus c. Okay, now you see that this is the same as what we have here, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, except we just need to put the little ones here. Okay, and the reason is because if you look at our table, we don't just have x and y, we have x1 and y1. So instead of just putting a y, we need to put y1, and instead of just putting an x here, or an x squared, we need x1 squared, or x1. Okay, so that's a little tricky, but if you remember this, it is in your notes, it will help you a lot, and there should be no reason for you to get this question wrong. Okay, you see in purple here, it put the curve of best fit for all of these points, and if we scroll down, it will give us exactly what A, B, and C are. Okay, so if you see here, it says A is 1, B is 6, and C is 8. Okay, so our equation should be y equals, we know A is 1, so 1x squared. B is 6, so plus 6x. And C is 8, so plus 8. Okay, and if you look at our answer choices, that looks like option B. Okay, so again, we have not talked about this very frequently. This equation is in your notes for the curve of best fit. The equation for the line of best fit is also in your notes. It's a little simpler than this, but it is in your notes. And again, these questions, when it asks you for a curve of best fit or line of best fit, you should be able to get these correct. If you remember what to type into Desmos, it will give you A, B, and C.